Indigenous Peoples Group Assignment. This slide outlines how Seneca aligns its organizational goals, strategy, and people requirements to support Indigenous hiring initiatives in a meaningful and sustainable way. Starting with the organizational goals, Seneca's focus is on advancing its commitment to truth and reconciliation while increasing Indigenous representation across the institution. This also includes promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion, and creating a workplace that is culturally safe, respectful, and supportive. An important part of these goals is also building and maintaining strong relationships with Indigenous communities. Moving to the organizational strategy, this is where those goals are translated into actionable steps. Seneca can implement targeted recruitment efforts such as using Indigenous job boards and strengthening partnerships with Indigenous organizations and communities. It's also important to ensure that hiring practices are culturally inclusive and minimize bias in the selection process. Aligning these efforts with the HR STAR model helps ensure consistency across recruitment, training, and overall employee development. Finally, the people requirements focuses on the individual's responsibility for carrying out this strategy. HR professionals and hiring managers need training in Indigenous cultural and inclusive hiring practices. Leadership support is also critical to drive accountability and long-term change. As well, support systems like mentorship programs, including onboarding and employee resources groups, help make sure that Indigenous employees are not only recruited, but also supported.
Okay, so in order to take advantage of the STAR model, now we have to take a look at how Seneca can apply each of the different points in the STAR model to the indigenous peoples. So we would start with the organizing point. In this specific point, we would look at redesigning the jobs that are currently happening at Seneca. It would start with auditing the jobs that we currently have and finding out if these are actually attractive for indigenous peoples, as well as double checking that the experience that indigenous people may have is considered equally than others' experiences, and maybe adding this part like equivalent experiences considered onto the knowledges or practices on the job specification. We also have responsibility to design and expand jobs that are focused on Indigenous engagement, so that Indigenous people can see a long-standing career at Seneca and not just a starting job or a no-end job. And then ultimately, we would have to implement flexibility for cultural obligations and traditions. These would create a culture where Indigenous people would feel better to participate in jobs at Seneca and trust Seneca as an employer. Then on the next point of the star, we would have staffing. Um, at this part of the star is how Seneca would work out different cultural participation so that Indigenous people can trust in the community. So we would start by posting jobs on specific Indigenous platforms like Indigenous Works and CCAB. These are platforms where most Indigenous peoples apply for employment. So it'd be better to have these kind of job postings in these places if we're looking for Indigenous employees rather than in the average Indeed or LinkedIn. We can also build community presence at Indigenous career fairs and employment centers. The idea is to have all year round presence in this kind of places from Seneca so that we can build trust in our community. Um, and we would create partnerships with Indigenous post-secondary schools. This could happen by offering co-op roles or direct hire roles where Indigenous communities could see a partnership in Seneca, which in turn could move on more candidates. And lastly, we would develop referral opportunities through the First Peoples at Seneca, which is one of our greatest tools at the moment within the Indigenous community. We would just be looking for opportunities where, or some sort of reward system where employees can be rewarded once they've referred somebody from the First Peoples at Seneca.
Thank you, Johan. In this slide, I will realize and clarify the how to strengthen the both sides of learning and performing sides of an assessment by supporting candidates before and during the process and ensuring assessment that are culturally safe and grounded. To offer pre-selection orientation sessions that explain what the process look like, we should provide sample questions, help candidates prepare relevant stories, and clarify what assessors are looking for to increase transparency. Um, Actually, for building assessment literacy in communities, especially through partnerships with indigenous organizations to explain how selection works, and co-design assessments materials and gather feedback on barriers, which enhances ecological validity and trust. On the performance side, actually using work sample and like practical assessment is essential because it would measure real job behavior rather than test taking skills or culturally specific communication norms. Simulated tasks, skill demonstrations, and group problem solving exercises, and hands-on assessment for technical roles will reduce reliance on abstract verbal reasoning or interview styles that may disadvantage indigenous candidates, and ultimately creating a more inclusive and accurate evaluation of potential. And the next slide, please. Yeah, I will actually support indigenous career growth in meaningful and equitable ways. I would say that organizations should create clear and supported pathways for advancements by offering leadership development programs co-designed with indigenous partners, providing mentorship opportunities with indigenous leaders inside or outside of the institutions, and recognizing that the knowledge must be expertise for promotion. Also, growth should also be rewarded through culturally meaningful and relational forms of recognition that will celebrate contributions in ways aligned with indigenous values. This may include acknowledging community building work, not just task completion, and honoring relational labor such as mentoring, supporting students, and offering cultural guidance, which often goes unseen in the Western human resource system. When appropriate, actually, elders should be included in recognition ceremonies to ensure visibility, respect, and cultural authenticity.
Okay, so lastly, we can demonstrate how our strategy works out both horizontally and vertically, and it uses the HR star model to kind of work around all the areas to create an efficient strategy. So, as I demonstrating at the beginning, for organizing and staffing, we showed that Seneca needs to redesign the job barriers, formally recognize Indigenous knowledge, and build a recruitment rooted in community trust. My teammates after demonstrated how uh, uh, building assessment and pre-selection communities can be rewarded, as well as how rewarding would create clear advancement pathways and recognizing relational labors within Indigenous peoples. At the center of the start, we could see how culture represents the biggest part. Because none of these individual practices will stick unless we build that culture that is genuinely inclusive of Indigenous employees and they can feel like they belong. Additionally, you can see that each element of the start connects to the next. Inclusive job design enables fair selection, and then fair selection enables meaningful onboarding. Onboarding enables retention, and then retention feeds back to um, Seneca's organizational goals. You can also see that the strategy has vertical alignment, as every part of the strategy traces back to Seneca's reconciliation mission at the top of that model. Thank you very much. These are our sources.